Hello, welcome back to another I Read to You video. I hope you really enjoyed the first one, so much so that you may be excited to know that this one will include 2 chapters. 2. We're going to be reading On the Road and The Deep Wood, chapter 2 and 3 of Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. I got it this time. I searched how to pronounce it. If you want, maybe you're feeling a little stressed right now, maybe you're feeling great, we could all just take a breath together, before we settle in. If you need to get something to drink, if you need to fix your blankets or your pillows, we'll just take a deep breath. Not anything that makes you feel uncomfy, just as comfortable as you can, if it's available for you to do so. Breathing in and exhale with a sigh. Well done. I hope you find some rest in this and some laughs in this. Reading and listening to stories and being read to is for all ages and for all people and for everyone. And you deserve the break if it brings you a break today. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. All right, chapter 2, The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. The Opened Road.
Ready?
Said the mole suddenly one bright summer morning.
If you please, I want to ask you a favor.
The rat was sitting on the riverbank, singing a little song he had just composed it himself, so he was very taken up with it and would not pay proper attention to Mole or anything else. Since early morning he had been swimming in the river in company with his friends the ducks, and when the ducks stood on their heads suddenly, as ducks will, he would dive down and tickle their necks, just under where their chins would be, if ducks had chins, till they were forced to come to the surface again in a hurry, spluttering and angry and shaking their feathers at him. For it is impossible to say quite all you feel when your head is underwater. At last they implored him to go away and attend to his own affairs and leave them to mind theirs. So the rat went away and sat on the riverbank in the sun and made up a song about them, which he called Duck's Ditty. All along the backwater, through the rushes tall, ducks are dabbling up tails tall and all. Ducks' tails, drakes' tails, yellow feet a quiver, yellow bills all out of sight, busy in the river. Slushy green undergrowth where the roach swim. Here we keep our larder, cool and full and dim. Everyone for what he likes, we like to be heads down, tails up, dabbling free. High in the blue above, swift swirl and call, we are down and dabbling up, tails all.
I don't know that I think so very much of that little song, Rat,
observed the mole cautiously. He was no poet himself and didn't care who knew it, and he had a candid nature. Ducks don't, nor don't the ducks neither, replied the rat cheerfully. They say, why can't fellows be allowed to do what they like, when they like, and as they like, instead of other fellows sitting on banks and watching them all the time and making remarks and poetry and things about them? What nonsense it all is. That's what the ducks say.
So it is,
said the mole with great heartiness. No, it isn't, cried the rat indignantly.
Well then, it isn't, it isn't,
replied the mole soothingly.
But what I wanted to ask you was, won't you take me to call on Mr. Toad? I've heard so much about him and I do so want to make his acquaintance.
Well, certainly, said the good-natured rat, jumping to his feet and dismissing poetry from his mind for the day. Get the boat out and we'll paddle out there at once. It's never the wrong time to call on Toad. Early or late, he's always the same fellow. Always good-tempered, Always glad to see you. Always sorry when you go."
He must be a very nice animal,
observed the mole as he got into the boat and took the sculls, while the rat settled himself comfortably in the stern. "He is indeed the best of animals," replied Rat. "So simple, so good-natured, and so affectionate. Perhaps he's not very clever. We can't all be geniuses. And it may be that he is both boastful and conceited. But he's got some great qualities too, has Toady. Rounding a bend in the river, they came in sight of a handsome, dignified old house of mellowed red brick with well-kept lawns reaching down to the water's edge. "There's Toad's Hall," said the rat, "and that creek on the left where the notice board says, 'Private, no landing allowed,' leads to his boathouse, where we'll leave the boat. The stables are over there to the right. That's a banqueting hall you're looking at now. Very old, that is. Toad is rather rich, you know, and this is really one of the nice houses in these parts, though never admit as much to Toad." They glided up the creek, and the mole shipped his sculls as they passed into the shadow of a large boathouse. Here they saw many handsome boats, slung from the cross beams or hauled up on a slip, but none in the water, and the place had an unused and a deserted air. The rat looked around him.
I understand, he said. Boating is played out. He's tired of it.
"Excuse me." The rat looked around him and said, "I understand," he said. "Boating is played out. He's tired of it and done with it. I wonder what new fad he's taking up now. Come along and let's look him up. We shall hear all about it quite soon." They disembarked and strolled across the gay, flower-decked lawns in search of Toad, whom they presently happened upon resting in a wicker garden chair with a preoccupied expression of face and a large map spread out on his knees. "Oh, hooray!" he cried, jumping up and seeing them. "This is splendid!" He shook the paws of both of them warmly, never waiting for an introduction to the mole. "How kind of you," he went on, dancing around them. "I was just going to send a boat down the river for you, Ratty, with strict orders that you were to be fetched up here at once. Whatever you were doing, I want you badly, both of you. Now what will you take? Come inside and have something. You don't know how lucky it is you're turning up just now." "Let's sit quiet a bit, Toady," said the rat, throwing himself in an easy chair, while the mole took another by the side of him and made some civil remark about Toad's delightful residence. "Finest house on the whole river," cried Toad boisterously. "Or anywhere else, for that matter," he could not help adding. Here the rat nudged the mole. Unfortunately, the toad saw him do it and turned very red. There was a moment's painful silence. Then Toad burst out laughing. "All right, Ratty," he said. "It's only my way, you know, and it's not such a very bad house, is it? You know, you rather like it yourself. Now, look here, let's be sensible. You are the very animals I wanted. You've got to help me. It's most important." "It's about your rowing, I suppose," said the rat with an innocent air. "You're getting on fairly well, though you splash a good bit still. With a great deal of patience and any quantity of coaching, you may—" "Oh, pooh! Boating!" interrupted the toad in great disgust. "Oh, silly boyish amusement. I've given up on that long ago. Sheer waste of time, that's what it is. It makes me downright sorry to see you fellows, who ought to know better, spending all your energies in that aimless manner. No, I've discovered the real thing, the only genuine occupation for a lifetime. I propose to devote the remainder of mine to it, and you can only regret the wasted years that lie behind me, squandered in trivialities. Come with me, dear Ratty, and your amiable friend also, if he will be so very good, just as far as the stable yard, and you shall see what you shall see." He led the way to the stable yard accordingly, the rat following with the most mistrustful expression. And there, drawn out of the coach house into the open, they saw a gypsy caravan, shining with newness, painted a canary yellow, picked out with green and red wheels. "There you are!" cried the toad, straddling and expanding himself. "There's real life for you, embodied in that little cut. The open road, the dusty highway, the heath, the common, the hedgerows, the rolling downs. Camps, villages, towns, cities. Here today, up and off to somewhere else tomorrow. Travel, change, interest, excitement. The whole world before you and a horizon that's always changing. And mind, this is the very finest cart of its sort that was ever built, without any exception. Come inside and look at the arrangements. Planned them all myself, I did." The mole was tremendously interested and excited and followed him eagerly up the steps and into the interior of the caravan. The rat only snorted and thrust his hands deep into his pockets, remaining where he was. It was indeed very compact and comfortable. Little sleeping bunks, a little table that folded up against the wall, a cooking stove, lockers, bookshelves, a bird cage with a bird in it, and pots, pans, jugs, and kettles of every size and variety. "All complete," said the toad triumphantly, pulling up a locker. "You see, biscuits, potted lobster, sardines, everything you can possibly want. Soda water here, bucket there, letter paper, bacon, jam, cards, and dominoes you'll find," he continued as they descended the steps again. "You'll find that nothing whatever has been forgotten when we make our start this afternoon." "I beg your pardon," said the rat slowly as he chewed a straw. "But did I overhear you say something about we and start and this afternoon?" "Now, you dear good old ratty," said Toad imploringly, "don't begin talking in that stiff and sniffy sort of way, because you know you've got to come. I can't possibly manage without you, so please consider it settled and don't argue. It's the only thing I can't stand. You surely don't mean to stick your dull, fussy old river all your life and just live in a hole, a bank, and a boat? I want to show you the world. I'm going to make an animal of you, my boy." "I don't care," said the rat doggedly. "I'm not coming, and that's flat. And I am going to stick to my old river and live in a hole and boat as I always done. And what's more, Mole's going to stick with me and do as I do. Aren't you, Mole?"
"Well, of course I am," said the mole loyally. "I'll always stick to you, rat. And when you say is to be has got to be. All the same, it sounds as if it might have been, well, it might have been rather fun, he added wistfully. Poor Mole. The life adventurous was so new a thing to him and so thrilling, and this fresh aspect of it was so tempting, and he had fallen in love at first sight with the canary-colored cart and all its little fitments. The rat saw what was passing in his mind and wavered. He hated disappointing people, and he was fond of the mole and would do almost anything to oblige him. Toad was watching both of them closely. "Come along and have some lunch," he said diplomatically, "and we'll talk it over. We needn't decide anything in a hurry." "Of course, I don't really care. I only want to give pleasure to you fellows. Live for others. That's my motto in my life." During luncheon, which was excellent, of course, as everything at Toad Hall always was, the toad simply let himself go. Disregarding the rat, he proceeded to play upon the inexperienced mole as on a harp. Naturally a voluble animal and always mastered by his imagination, he painted the prospects of the trip and the joys of the open life and the roadside in such glowing colors that the mole could hardly sit in his chair for excitement. Somehow, it soon seemed taken for granted by all three of them that the trip was a settled thing, and the rat, though still unconvinced in his mind, allowed his good nature to override his personal objections.
He could not bear to disappoint his two friends, who were already deep in schemes and anticipations, planning out each day's separate occupations for several weeks ahead. When they were quite ready, the now triumphant Toad led his companions to the paddock and set them to capture the old gray horse who, without having been consulted, and to his extreme annoyance, had been told off by Toad for the dustiest job in this dusty expedition. He frankly preferred the paddock and took a deal of catching. Meantime, Toad packed the lockers still tighter with the necessaries and hung nose bags, nets of onions, bundles of hay, and baskets from the bottom of the cart. At last the horse was caught and harnessed, and they set off, all talking at once, each animal either trudging by the side of the cart or sitting on the shaft, as the humor took him. It was a golden afternoon. The smell of the dust they kicked up was rich and satisfying. Out of thick orchards on either side of the road, birds called and whistled to them cheerfully. Tweet, tweet, tweet. Good-natured wayfarers passing them gave them good day and stopped to say nice things about their beautiful cart, and rabbits, sitting at their front doors in the hedgerows, held up their forepaws and said, "Oh my, oh my, oh my." Late in the evening, tired and happy and miles from home, they drew up on a remote common far from habitations, turned the horse loose to graze, and ate their simple supper sitting on the grass by the side of the cart. Toad talked big about all he was going to do in the days to come, while stars grew fuller and larger around them, and a yellow moon appearing suddenly and silently from nowhere in particular came to keep them company and listen to their talk. At last they turned into their little bunks in the cart, and Toad, kicking out his legs sleepily, said, "Well, good night, you fellows. This is the real life for gentlemen. Talk about your old river." "I don't talk about my river," replied the patient rat. "You know I don't, Toad. But I think about it," he added pathetically in a lower tone. "I think about it all the time." The mole reached out from under his blanket, felt for the rat's paw in the darkness, and gave it a squeeze. "I'll do whatever you like, Ratty," he whispered. "Shall we run away tomorrow morning, quite early, very early, and go back to our dear old hole on the river?" No, we'll see it out," whispered back the rat. "Thanks awfully, but I ought to stick to Toad till this trip is ended. It won't be safe for him to be left to himself. It won't take very long. His fads never do. Good night." And the end was indeed nearer than even the rat suspected. After so much open air and excitement, the Toad slept very soundly, and no amount of shaking could rouse him out of bed the next morning. So the mole and rat turned to, quietly and manfully, and while the rat saw to the horse and lit a fire and cleaned last night's cups and platters and got things ready for breakfast, the mole trudged off to the nearest village, a long way off, for milk and eggs and various necessaries the Toad had, of course, forgotten to provide. The hard work had all been done, and the two animals were resting, thoroughly exhausted, by the time Toad appeared on the scene, fresh and gay, remarking what a pleasant, easy life it was they were all leading now. After the cares and worries and fatigues of housekeeping at home, they had a pleasant ramble that day over grassy downs, along narrow by lanes, and camped as before on a common. Only this time, the two guests took care that Toad should do his fair share of work. In consequence, when the time came for starting next morning, Toad was by no means so rapturous about the simplicity of the primitive life, and indeed attempted to resume his place in his bunk, whence he was hauled by force. Their way lay as before, across country by narrow lanes, and it was not till the afternoon they came out on the high road, their first high road, and their disaster, fleet and unforeseen, sprang out on them. Disaster, momentous indeed to their expedition, but simply overwhelming in its effect on the after career of Toad. They were strolling along the high road easily, the mole by the horse's head talking to him. Since the horse had complained that he was being frightfully left out of it and nobody considered him in the least, the Toad and the water rat walking behind the cart talking together. At least Toad was talking. And Rat was saying at intervals, "Yes, precisely. And what did you say to him?" And thinking all the time of something very different, when far behind them they heard a faint warning hum, like the drone of a distant bee. Glancing back, they saw a small cloud of dust with a dark center of energy advancing on them at incredible speed, while from out of the dust a faint boop boop wailed like an uneasy animal in pain. Hardly regarding it, they turned to resume their conversation, when in an instant, as it seemed, the peaceful scene was changed, and with a blast of wind and a whirl of sound that made them jump for the nearest ditch, it was on them. The burp burp rang with a brazen shout in their ears. They had a moment's glimpse of an interior of glittering plate glass in rich Morocco, and the magnificent motor car, immense, breath-snatching, passionate, with its pilot tense and hugging his wheel, possessed all earth and air for the fraction of a second, flung an enveloping cloud of dust that blinded and wrapped them utterly, and then dwindled to a speck in the far distance. Changed back into a droning bee once more. The old gray horse, dreaming, as he plodded along, of his quiet paddock, in a new raw situation such as this, simply abandoned himself to his natural emotions, rearing, plunging, backing steadily in spite of all the mole's efforts at his head and all the mole's lively language directed at his better feelings. He drove the cart backwards towards the deep ditch at the side of the road. It wavered an instant, then there was a heart-ending crash, and the canary-colored cart, their pride and their joy, lay on its side in the ditch, an irredeemable wreck. The rat danced up and down in the road, simply transported with passion. "You villains!" he shouted, shaking both fists. "You scoundrels! You highwaymen! You road hogs! I'll have the law on you! I'll report you! I'll take you all the courts!" His homesickness had quite slipped away from him, and for the moment he was the skipper of the canary-colored vessel driven on a shoal by the reckless jockeying of rival mariners, and he was trying to recollect all the fine and biting things he used to say to masters of steam launches when their wash as they drove too near to the bank used to flood his parlor carpet at home. Toad sat straight down in the middle of the dusty road, his legs stretched out before him, and stared fixedly in the direction of the disappearing motor car. He breathed short. His face wore a placid, satisfied expression, and at intervals he faintly murmured, "Burp, burp, 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 burp." The mole was busy trying to quiet the horse, which he succeeded in doing after a time. Then he went to look at the cart on its side in the ditch. It was indeed a sorry sight. Panels and windows smashed, axles hopelessly bent, one wheel off, sardine tins scattered over the wide world, and the bird in the birdcage sobbing pitifully, "Tweet, tweet," and calling to be let out. "Tweet, tweet, let me out of this damn cage, I want to fly free." I added that. The rat came to help him, but their united efforts were not sufficient to right the cart. "Hi, Toad," they cried. "Come here and bear a hand, can't you?" The Toad never answered a word or budged from his seat in the road, so they went to see what was the matter with him. They found him in a sort of a trance, a happy smile on his face, his eyes still fixed on the dusty wake of their destroyer. At intervals he was still heard to murmur, "Burp, burp, burp, burp."
Herp, herp.
The rat shook him by the shoulder.
Are you coming to help us, Toad? He demanded sternly.
Glorious, stirring sight, murmured Toad, never offering to move. The poetry of motion, the real way to travel, the only way to travel. Here today and next week tomorrow. Tomorrow, villages skipped, towns and cities jumped, always somebody else's horizon. Oh, bliss. Oh, boop, boop. Oh, my, oh, Lord.
Oh, stop being an ass, Toad,
cried the mole despairingly. And to think I never knew, went on the Toad in a dreamy monotone. All those wasted years that lie behind me. I never knew, never even dreamt. But now that I know, now that I fully realize, oh, what a flowery track lies spread before me. Henceforth, what dust clouds shall spring up behind me as I speed on my reckless way? What carts shall I fling carelessly into the ditch in the wake of my magnificent onset? Horrid little carts, common carts, canary-colored carts.
What are we to do with him?
Asked the mole of the water rat. Nothing at all, replied the rat firmly, because there is really nothing to be done, you see. I know him from of old. He is now possessed. He has got a new craze, and it always takes him that way in its first stage. He'll continue like that for days, like an animal walking in a happy dream, quite useless for all practical purposes. Never mind him. Let's go and see what there is to be done about the cart. A careful inspection showed them that even if they succeeded in riding it by themselves, the cart would travel no longer. The axles were in a hopeless state, and the missing wheel was shattered into pieces. The rat knotted the horse's reins over his back and took him by the head, carrying the bird cage and its hysterical occupant in the other hand. Come on, he said grimly to the mole. It's 5 or 6 miles to the nearest town, and we shall just have to walk it. The sooner we make the start, the better.
But what about Toad?
Asked the mole anxiously, as they set off together.
We can't leave him here, sitting in the middle of the road by himself, in the distracted state he's in. It's not safe. Supposing another thing were to come along.
Oh, bother, Toad, said the rat savagely. I'm done with him. They had not proceeded very far on their own. However, when there was a pattering of feet behind them, and Toad caught them up and thrust a paw inside the elbow of each of them, still breathing short and staring into vacancy. Now look here, Toad, said the rat sharply. As soon as we get to town, you'll have to go straight to the police station and see if they know anything about that motor car and who it belongs to, and lodge a complaint against it. And then you'll have to go to a blacksmith or a wheels right and arrange for that cart to be fetched and mended and put to rights. It'll take time, but it's not quite a hopeless smash. Meanwhile, the mole and I will go to an inn and find comfortable rooms where we can stay till the cart's ready, until your nerves have recovered their shock. Police station? Complaint? Murmured Toad dreamily. Me? Complain of that beautiful, that heavenly vision that has been vouchsafed me? Mend the cart? I'm done with carts forever. I never want to see the cart or hear of it again, no ratty. You can't think how obliged I am to you for consenting to come on this trip. I wouldn't have gone without you, and then I might have never seen that swan, that sunbeam, that thunderbolt. I might have never heard that entrancing sound, or smelt that bewitching smell. I owe it to all of you, my best of friends. The rat turned from him in despair. You see what I said? He said to the mole, addressing him across Toad's head. He's quite hopeless. I gave it up. When we get to the town, we'll get to the railway station, and with luck, we may pick up a train there. That'll get us to Riverbank tonight.
And if ever you catch me going a pleasuring with this provoking animal again, he snorted. And during the rest of that weary trudge, addressed his remarks exclusively to Mole. On reaching the town, they went straight to the station and deposited Toad in the second-class waiting room, giving a porter 2 pence to keep a strict eye on him. They then left the horse at an inn stable and gave what directions they could about the cart and its contents. Eventually, a slow train having landed them at a station not very far from Toad Hall, they escorted the spellbound, sleepwalking Toad to his door, put him inside it, and instructed his housekeeper to feed him, undress him, and put him to bed. Then they got out their boat from the boathouse, sculled down the river home, and at a very late hour sat down to supper in their own cozy riverside parlor, to the rat's great joy and contentment. The following evening, the mole, who had risen late and taken things very easy all day, was sitting on the bank fishing, when the rat, who had been looking up his friends and gossiping, came strolling along to find him. "You heard the news?" he said. "There's nothing else being talked about all along the riverbank. Toad went up to town by an early train this morning, and he has ordered a large and very expensive motor car." That was chapter 2, On the Road of the Wind in the Willows, by Kenneth Grahame. And we're actually going to read more. We're going to read chapter 3, The Wild Wood. If you need a sip of water, if you need to take a little pee break, gotta go pith, girl, go pith. Adjust your pillows, eat a piece of candy, and we'll get started on The Wild Wood, where we're going to meet a new character with a new voice. Yay. The mole had long wanted to make the acquaintance of the badger. He seemed, by all accounts, to be such an important personage, and though rarely visible, to make his unseen influence felt by everybody about the place. But whenever the mole mentioned his wish to the water rat, he always found himself put off. "It's all right," the rat would say. "Badger'll turn up some day or other. He's always turning up, and then I'll introduce you. The best of fellows. But you must not only take him as you find him, but when you find him."
Couldn't you ask him here at dinner or something?"
said the mole. "He wouldn't come," replied the rat simply. "Badger hates society and invitations and dinner and all that sort of thing."
"Well then, supposing we go and call on him?"
suggested the mole. "Oh, I'm sure he wouldn't like that at all," said the rat, quite alarmed. "He's so very shy. He'd be sure to be offended. I've never even ventured to call on him at his own home himself, though I know him so well. Besides, we can't. It's quite out of the question, 'cause he lives in the very middle of the wild wood."
"Well, supposing he does," said the mole. "You told me the wild wood was all right, you know."
"Oh, I know, so it is," replied the rat evasively. "But I think we won't go there just now. Not just yet. It's a long way, and he wouldn't be home at this time of year anyhow, and he'll be coming along some day if you wait quietly." The mole had to be content with this, but the badger never came along, and every day brought its amusements, and it was not till summer was long over and cold, and frost in merry ways kept them much indoors, and the swollen river raced past outside their windows with a speed that mocked at boating of any sort of kind, that he found his thoughts dwelling again with much persistence on the solitary gray badger who lived his own life by himself in his hole in the middle of the wild wood. In the wintertime, the rat slept a great deal, retiring early and rising late. During his short day, he sometimes scribbled poetry or did other small domestic jobs around the house. And of course, there were always animals dropping in for a chat, and consequently, there was a good deal of storytelling and comparing notes on the past summer and all its doings. Such a rich chapter it had been when one came to look back on it all. With illustrations so numerous and so very highly colored, the pageant of the riverbank had marched steadily along, unfolding itself in scene pictures that succeeded each other in stately procession, Purple loose strife arrived early, shaking luxuriant tangled locks along the edge of the mirror once its own face laughed back at it. Willow herb, tender and wistful like a pink sunset cloud, was not slow to follow. Comfrey, the purple hand in hand with the white, crept forth to take its place in the line, and at last, one morning, the diffident and delaying Dog Rose stepped delicately on the stage, and one knew, as if string music had announced it in stately chords, that strayed into a gavotte, that June at last was here. One member of the company was still awaited, the shepherd boy, for the nymphs to woo, the knight for whom the ladies waited at the window, the prince that was to kiss the sleeping summer back to life and love. But when meadow sweet, debonair, and odorous in amber jerkin moved graciously to his place in the group, then the play was ready to begin. And what a play it had been! Drowsy animals snug in their holes, while wind and rain were battering at their doors, recalled still keen mornings, an hour before sunrise, when the white mist, as yet undispersed, clung closely along the surface of the water. Then the shock of the early plunge, the scamper along the bank, and the radiant transformation of earth, air, and water, when suddenly the sun was with them again, and gray was gold, and color was born, and sprang out of the earth once more. They recalled the languorous siesta of hot midday, deep in green undergrowth, the sun striking through in tiny gold shafts and spots, the boating and bathing of the afternoon, the rambles along dusty lanes and through yellow cornfields, and the long, cool evening at last, when so many threads were gathered up, so many friendships rounded, and so many adventures planned for the morrow. There was plenty to talk about on those short winter days when the animals found themselves around the fire. Still, the mole had a good deal of spare time on his hands. So one afternoon, when the rat in his armchair before the blaze was alternately dozing and trying over rhymes that wouldn't fit, he formed the resolution to go out by himself and explore the wildwood and perhaps strike up an acquaintance with Mr. Badger. It was a cold, still afternoon with the hard, steely sky overhead when he slipped out of the warm parlor into the open air. The country lay bare and entirely leafless around him, and he thought that he had never seen so far and so intimately into the insides of things as on the winter day when nature was deep in her annual slumber and seemed to have kicked the clothes off. Copses, dells, quarries, and all hidden places, which had been mysterious mines for exploration in leafy summer, now exposed themselves and their secrets pathetically, and seemed to ask him to overlook their shabby poverty for a while, till they could riot in rich masquerade as before, and trick and entice him with the old deceptions. It was pitiful in a way, and yet cheering, even exhilarating. He was glad that he liked the country undecorated, hard, and stripped of its finery. He had got down to the bare bones of it, and they were fine and strong and simple. He did not want the warm clover and the play of seeding grasses. The screens of quickset, the billowy drapery of beech and elm seemed best away, and with the great cheerfulness of spirit he pushed on towards the wild wood, which lay before him low and threatening, like a black reef in some still southern sea. There was nothing to alarm him at first entry. Twigs crackled under his feet, logs tripped him, fungus on stumps resembled caricatures, and startled him for a moment by their likeness to something familiar and far away. But that was all fun and exciting. It led him on, and he penetrated to where the light was less, and trees crouched nearer, and holes made ugly mouths at him on either side. Everything was very still now. The dusk advanced on him steadily, rapidly, gathering in behind and before, and the light seemed to be draining away like flood water. Then the faces began. It was over his shoulder and indistinctly that he first thought he saw a face, a little, evil,
wedge-shaped face looking at him from a hole. When he turned and confronted it, the thing had vanished. He quickened his pace, telling himself cheerfully not to begin imagining things, or there would be simply no end to it. He passed another hole. I'm spooking myself. He passed another hole, and another, and then, yes, no, yes, certainly a little narrow face with hard eyes, had flashed up for an instant from a hole and was gone. He hesitated, braced himself up for an effort, and strode on. Then suddenly, and as it had been so all the time, every hole, far and near, and there were hundreds of them, seemed to possess its face, coming and going rapidly, all fixing on him glances of malice and hatred, all hard-eyed and evil and sharp. If he could only get away from the holes in the banks, he thought, there would be no more faces. He swung off the path and plunged into the untrodden places of the wood. Then the whistling began. Very faint and shrill it was, and far behind him, when first he heard it, but somehow it made him hurry forward. Then, still very faint and shrill, it sounded far ahead of him and made him hesitate and want to go back. As he halted in indecision, it broke out on either side and seemed to be caught up and passed on throughout the whole length of the wood to its farthest limit. They were up and alert and ready, evidently, whoever they were, and he was alone and unarmed and far from any help, and the night was closing in. Then the pattering began. He thought it was only falling leaves at first, so slight and delicate was the sound of it. Pat, 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 pat. Then as it grew, it took a regular rhythm, and he knew it for nothing else but the pat, pat, pat of little feet, still a very long way off. Was it in front of him? Or behind? It seemed to be first one, and then the other, and then gone. It grew, and it multiplied, till from every quarter as he listened anxiously, leaning this way and that, it seemed to be closing in on him. As he stood still to hearken, a rabbit came running towards him through the trees. He waited, expecting it to slacken pace or to swerve from him into a different course. Instead, the animal almost brushed him as it dashed past, his face set and hard, his eyes staring. "Get out of this, you fool! Get out!" The mole heard him mutter as he swung round a stump and disappeared down a friendly burrow. The pattering increased till it sounded like sudden hail on the dry leaf carpet spread around him. The whole wood seemed running now, running hard, hunting, chasing, closing in around something or somebody. In panic, he began to run too, aimlessly. He knew not whither. He ran up against things. He fell over things and into things. He darted under things and dodged around things. At last he took refuge in a deep, dark hollow of an old beech tree, which offered shelter, concealment, perhaps even safety. But who could tell? Anyhow, he was too tired to run any further and could only snuggle down into the dry leaves, which had drifted into the hollow, and hope he was safe for a time. And as he lay there, panting and trembling and listening to the whistlings and the patterings outside, he knew it at last, in all its fullness. That dread thing which other little dwellers in field and hedgerow have encountered here, and know as their darkest moment, that thing with which the rat had vainly tried to shield him from, the terror of the wild wood. Meantime, the rat, warm and comfortable, dozed by his fireside. Lakes and boats and rivers. His paper of half-finished verses slipped from his knee. His head fell back, his mouth opened. He wandered by the verdant banks of dream rivers. Then a coal slipped, the fire crackled, and sent up a spurt of flame, and he woke with a start. "It's a boat!" Remembering what he had been engaged upon, he reached down to the floor for his verses, pored over them for a minute, and then looked around for the mole to ask him if he knew a good rhyme for something or other. But the mole was not there. He listened for a time. The house seemed very quiet. Then he called, "Moley!" several times. "Moley! Hey, mole! Hey, mole, moley, mole, mole! Hey, moley!" Receiving no answer, got up and went out into the hall. The mole's cap was missing from its accustomed peg.
His galoshes, which always lay by the umbrella stand, were also gone. The rat left the house and carefully examined the muddy surface of the ground outside, hoping to find the mole's tracks. There they were, sure enough. The galoshes were new, just bought for the winter, and the pimples on their soles were fresh and sharp. He could see the imprints of them in the mud, running along, straight and purposeful, leading direct to the wild wood. The rat looked very grave and stood in deep thought for a minute or two. Then he re-entered the house, strapped a belt round his waist, shoved a brace of pistols into it, took up a stout cudgel that stood in the corner of the hall, and set off for the wildwood at a smart pace. It was already getting toward dusk when he reached the first fringe of trees and plunged without hesitation into the wood, looking anxiously on either side for any sight of his friend. Here and there, wicked little faces popped out of those holes, but vanished immediately at sight of that valorous animal, his pistols, and the great ugly cudgel in his grasp. Cudgel. Cudgel. And the whistling and pattering, which he had heard quite plainly on his first entry, died away and ceased, and all was very still. He made his way manfully through the length of the wood to its furthest edge. Then, forsaking all paths, he set himself to traverse it, laboriously working over the whole ground, and all this time calling out cheerfully, "Molly, Molly, Molly, where are you? It's me, it's old rat." He had patiently hunted through the woods for an hour or more, when at last, to the joy, he heard a little answering cry. Guiding himself by the sound, he made his way through the gathering darkness to the foot of an old beech tree with a hole in it, and from out of the hole came a feeble voice saying,
Ratty, is that really you?
The rat crept into the hole, and there he found the mole, exhausted and still trembling.
Oh, Rat, he cried. Never been so frightened. You can't think.
"Oh, I quite understand," said the rat soothingly. "You shouldn't really have gone and done that, Mole. I did my best to keep you from it. We riverbankers, we hardly ever come here by ourselves. If we have to come, we come in couples at least. Then we're generally all right. Besides, there are 100 things one has to know, which we understand all about and you don't as yet. I mean passwords and signs and sayings which have power and effect. And plants you carry in your pocket and verses you repeat and dodges and tricks you practice. All simple enough when you know them, but you've got to be known if you're small or you'll find yourself in trouble. Of course, if you were a badger or otter, it would be quite another matter."
Surely the brave Mr. Toad wouldn't mind coming here by himself, would he?
Inquired the mole. "Oh, Toad," said the rat, laughing heartily. "Oh, no, he wouldn't show his face here alone, not for a whole half-full of golden guineas. Toad wouldn't." The mole was gratefully cheered by the sound of the rat's careless laughter, as well as by the sight of his stick and his gleaming pistols, and he stopped shivering and began to feel bolder and more himself again. "Now then," said the rat presently, "we really must put ourselves together and make a start for home while there's still a little light left. It will never do to spend the night here. You understand, too cold for one thing."
Dear Ratty, said the poor mole, I'm dreadfully sorry, but I'm simply a deadbeat, and that's a solid fact. You must let me rest here a little while longer and get my strength back if I'm to get home at all.
"Oh, all right," said the good-natured rat. "Rest away. It's pretty nearly pitch dark now anyhow, and there ought to be a bit of moon later." So the mole got well into the dry leaves and stretched himself out, and presently dropped off into a sleep. Thought of a broken and troubled sort. While the rat covered himself up too, as best he might for warmth, and lay patiently waiting with a pistol in his paw. When at last the mole woke up, much refreshed and in his usual spirits, the rat said, Now then, I'll just take a look outside, see if everything's quiet, and then we really must be off. And he went to the entrance of their retreat and put his head out. Then the mole heard him saying quietly to himself, "Hello, hello, here is a go."
What's up, Ratty?
Asked the mole. Snow is up. Snow is up. Snow is up, replied the rat briefly, or rather down. It's snowing hard. The mole came and crouched beside him, and looking out, saw the wood that had been so dreadful to him and had changed quite a lot of aspects. Holes, hollows, pools, pitfalls, and other black menaces to the wayfarer were vanishing fast, and a gleaming carpet of fairy was springing up everywhere. They looked too delicate to be trodden upon by rough feet. A fine powder filled the air and caressed the cheek with a tingle in its touch, and the black boles of the trees showed up in a light that seemed to come from below. Well, well, it can't be helped, said the rat, after pondering. We must make a start and take our chances, I suppose. The worst of it is, I don't exactly know where we are, and now this snow makes everything look so different. It did indeed. The mole would have known that it was the same wood. However, they set out bravely and took the line that seemed most promising, holding on to each other and pretending with invincible cheerfulness that they recognized an old friend in every fresh tree that grimly and silently greeted them, or saw openings, gaps, or paths with a familiar turn in them in the monotony of white space and black tree trunks that refused to vary. An hour or two later, they had lost all count of time. They pulled up, dispirited, weary, and hopeless at sea, and sat down on a fallen tree trunk to recover their breath and consider what must be done. They were aching with fatigue and bruised with tumbles. They had fallen into several holes and got wet thorough. The snow was getting so deep that they could hardly drag their little feet through it, and the trees were thicker and more like each other than ever. There seemed to be no end to this wood, and no beginning, and no difference in it, worst of all, no way out. Well, we can't sit here very long, said the rat. We shall have to make another push for it and do something or other. The cold is too awful for anything, and the snow will soon be too deep for us to wade through. He peered about him and considered. Look here, he went on. This is what occurs to me. There's a sort of dell down here in front of us where the ground seems all hilly and humpy and hummocky. We'll make our way down into that and try and find some sort of shelter. A cave or a hole with a dry floor in it. Out of the snow and the wind, and there we'll have a good rest before we try again, for we're both of us pretty dead beat. Besides, the snow may leave off or something may turn up. So once more they got on their feet and struggled down into the dell, where they hunted about for a cave or some corner that was dry and a protection from the keen wind and the whirling snow. They were investigating one of the hummocky bits the rat had spoken of, when suddenly the mole tripped and fell forward on his face with a squeal.
Oh, my leg, he cried. Oh, my poor shin.
And he sat up on the snow and nursed his leg and both his front paws. Poor old mole, said the rat kindly. You don't seem to be having much luck today, do you? Let's have a look at that leg, yes? He went on, going down on his knees to look. Oh, you've cut your shin. Sure enough. Wait till I get out my handkerchief and I'll tie it up for you.
I must have tripped over a hidden branch or a stump,
he said, the mole miserably.
Oh my.
It's a very clean cut, said the rat, examining it again attentively. Oh, that was never done by a branch or a stump. Looks as if it was made by a sharp edge of something in metal. Funny. He pondered a while and examined the humps and slopes that surrounded them.
Well, never mind what done it, said the mole, forgetting his grammar and his pain. It hurts just the same, whatever done it.
But the rat, after carefully tying up the leg with his handkerchief, had left him and was busy scraping in the snow. He scratched and shoveled and explored, all four legs working busily, while the mole waited impatiently, remarking at intervals,
Oh, come on, rat.
Suddenly, the rat said, Hooray! And then hooray, 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 hooray! Hooray! and fell to executing a feeble jig in the snow.
So what have you found, Ratty?
Asked the mole, still nursing his leg. Come and see. Come and see, said the delighted rat as he jiggled on. The mole hobbled up to the spot and had a good look.
Well, he said at last slowly, I see it right enough. Seen same sort of thing before lots of times. Familiar object, I call it. A door scraper. Well, what of it? Why dance jigs around a door scraper?
But don't you see what it means, you dull-witted animal? Cried the rat impatiently.
So of course I see what it means, replied the mole. It simply means that some very careless and forgetful person has left a door scraper lying in the middle of the wild wood, just where it's sure to trip everybody up. Very thoughtless of him, I call it. When I get home, I shall go and complain about it to somebody or others. I'd see if I don't.
No, dear, oh dear, cried the rat in despair at his obtuseness. Here, stop arguing and come and scrape, as he set to work again and made the snow fly in all directions around him. After some further toil, his efforts were rewarded, and a very shabby doormat lay exposed to view. There, what did I tell you? Exclaimed the rat in great triumph.
Absolutely nothing whatever,
replied the mole with perfect truthfulness. Well now, he went on,
you seem to have found another piece of domestic litter, done for and thrown away, and I suppose you're perfectly happy. Better go ahead and dance your jig around that if you've got to and get it over. Then perhaps we can go on and not waste any more time over rubbish heaps. Can we eat a doormat, or sleep under a doormat, or sit on a doormat and sled home over the snow on it, you exasperating rodent?
Do you mean to say, cried the excited rat, that this doormat doesn't tell you anything?
Really, rat, said the mole quite pettishly. I think we've had enough of this folly. Whoever heard of a doormat telling anyone anything? They simply don't do it. They're not that sort at all. Doormats know their place.
Now look here, you thick-headed beast, replied the rat very angrily. This must stop. Not another word. But scrape and scratch and dig and hunt round, especially on the sides of the hummocks. If you want to sleep dry and warm tonight, for it's our last chance. The rat attacked a snowbank beside them with a door, probing with his cudgel everywhere and then digging with fury. And the mole scraped busily too, more to oblige the rat for any other reason, for his opinion was that his friend was getting lightheaded. Some 10 minutes hard work, and the point of the rat's cudgel struck something that sounded hollow. He worked till he could get a paw through and feel, then called the mole to come and help him. Hard at it went the two animals, till at least the result of their labors stood full in view of the astonished and hitherto incredulous mole. In the side of what had seemed to be a snowbank stood a solid-looking little door, painted a dark green. An iron bell pull hung by the side, and below it, on a small brass plate, neatly engraved in square capital letters, they could read by the aid of moonlight, Mr. Badger. The mole fell backwards on the snow from sheer surprise and delight.
Rat,
he cried in penitence.
you're a wonder, a real wonder. That's what you are. I see it all now. You argued it out, step by step, in that wise head of yours, from the very moment that I fell and cut my shin, and you looked at that cut, and once your majestic mind said to itself, door scraper, and then you turned and you found the very door scraper that had done it. Did you stop there? No. Some people would have been quite satisfied, but not you. Your intellect went on working. Let me only just find a doormat, says to yourself, and my theory is proved. And of course you found your doormat. You're so clever. I believe you could find anything you liked. Now, says you, that door doesn't exist as plain as I saw it. There's nothing else remains to be done but to find it. Well, I've read about that sort of thing in books, but I've never come across it in real life. You ought to go to where you'll be properly appreciated. You're simply wasted here among us fellows. If I only had your head right.
But as you haven't, interrupted the rat rather unkindly. I suppose you're going to sit on the snow all night and talk. Get up at once and hang on to that bell pull you see there and ring hard as you can while I hammer. Well, the rat attacked the door with his stick. The mole sprang up at the bell pull, clutched it, and swung there, both feet well off the ground. And from quite a long way off, they could faintly hear a deep-toned bell respond. That's the end of the chapter. Oh, it's a cliffhanger. I thought I was going to get to share with you the voice I thought of for Mr. Badger. I guess we're going to have to wait. So sorry. But yeah, that was chapter 2 and 3 of The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. And that's On the Road and The Deep Wood. And chapter 4 is Mr. Badger. Oh my gosh, I'm pretty excited for that. So I'll record that soon, and I'll show you the little art of I believe that is Mole and Ratty knocking on the door, waiting, to open the door, I think. Or maybe, could that be Badger? I don't know. It looks like they're both looking at the door. I think that's Mole and Ratty. Yeah. So, maybe. We'll find out. I hope you enjoyed reading time. That was really fun. And I hope to have another video out in a week. So if you haven't already, please subscribe or like this video so you can be notified when the next one comes out. If you had a favorite part of the story, please share it in the comments. I really liked Mr. Toad. I had a fun time voicing Toad and trying my best with Toad, and I can totally relate to like having a hobby and going all out on it and then like dropping it a week later and then getting another hobby and thinking it's the best thing ever. It's kind of how I cycle through games too, like video games, like your Steam library or whatever, like never actually finishing the game, but sometimes I actually do now, which is nice. And there's nothing wrong with like picking up hobbies and then dropping them and picking them up and dropping them. I would just say like maybe don't invest a ton of money in them right away, but like that's okay. Life is to be enjoyed and lived however that is. It doesn't have to look the same for everybody. It's all right to be not a professional at anything. I'm not. I just enjoy all the things that I can because life is awesome now. Thanks for listening. Even if I messed up some words, didn't know what some things meant, didn't know how to pronounce things, that's okay. I don't know who needs to hear this, but I've often needed to hear it before. But just let it be imperfect, okay? Let it be imperfect. All right. I'm going to go now. My face hurts from smiling, and I'm just going to go edit this video. I'm going to go post it, and I'm going to have a good rest of my day. Take care of yourselves, eat your snacks, drink your water, and I hope I didn't forget to say anything. You're doing better than you think. Okay. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye.